Many people call me the most famous ghostwriter in the world. Number one ghostwriter in the world, the celebrity ghostwriter, the go-to ghostwriter, the guy for writing books. I like to think of myself as writing books of consequence. I do so both under my own name as an author, as a co-author, most recently Unhumans and Bulletproof, both co-authored with Jack Posobiec. And of course, ghostwriting. I've ghostwritten more than 95 books at this point. I am 33 years old. Do the math. Been doing this for 13 years. I'd like to give you a little secret. People love secrets. People love when you share how a profession is actually executed with excellence. And I want to share that with you tonight, today, this morning, whenever you be watching this. And I want to do it through an op-ed I published recently on the Springfield Haitian Migrant Crisis. Now, Vivek Ramaswamy went to Springfield, Ohio a few weeks ago and held a town hall. I was there. I spoke with the media outside. The vast majority of them were not friendly, let's say, to the welfare of the people of Springfield, and it seemed as if they were part of an extension of the Kamala Harris campaign, which they very well could have been. In-kind contributions, am I right? Now, coming back to the topic of today, how to ghostwrite like me. I was inspired by Thomas Paine, who authored, besides Common Sense, The American Crisis, which was published on December 23rd, 1776, just as the Continental armies under George Washington, their terms were up, their terms of service. They were going to be going home, the vast majority of his army. They were about to be gone on December 31st, 1776, and Washington had hardly a success, a victory to show for their blood, sweat, tears, toil, and frostbite, and subsequent amputations. Not a good situation. It was bad. It was bad. So Thomas Paine to the rescue. He wrote a persuasive piece that changed everything. He wrote The American Crisis. And I, being inspired by Thomas Paine, being a communicator, being a persuader for hire, in the same way that Thomas Paine changed everything, his pamphlet, The American Crisis, became Washington's recruiting tool. He had all of his officers read it so that people would re-up their enlistment. It worked. That, together with the gamble, the famous crossing of the Delaware, and the storming of the Hessian troops' headquarters there on Christmas morning, and the seizure of all of their arms, cannon, so on and so forth, morale boost. But that effort came after the effective persuasion. Yes, I would like to see America returned to the glory I have heard of so much in my life, and I briefly witnessed in the 1990s. The America I was born in no longer exists. I want it back for my own children. And for that, I wrote The American Migrant Crisis. And what I did was I pulled key words, notable words from Thomas Paine and put them in my piece. And this is how I ghostwrite, by the way. When I'm interviewing an author and I need to write something that's in their voice, what I need to do is I need to pull special words, notable words, phrases that they use and that they recognize as, that's me. Whoa. That is the effect. That is the impact. That is what I'm going for. I want them to see enough of themselves in it to give them goosebumps. I want to give you an example of how I did this. So in the original piece by Thomas Paine, The American Crisis, you are probably familiar with the first few phrases. These are the times that try men's souls. The summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will, in this crisis, shrink from the service of their countrymen. But he that stands by it now deserves the love and thanks of man and woman. Tyranny, like hell, is not easily conquered. Yet we have this consolation with us, that the harder the conflict, the more glorious the triumph. Now you'll notice similar keywords that I used, including the first four words. These are the times, because I put that this is inspired by The American Crisis by Thomas Paine. It is effectively The American Crisis by Thomas Paine for the United States, for America, for we the people in 2024. All these years later. And this is the opening of the American crisis. And you will see similarities in sentence structure, in sentences, and in keywords. The American Migrant Crisis by Joshua Lisec, published in Human Events. These are the times and seasons of change. The autumn of our empire will, in this crisis, lead us into the desolation of winter. But we that cherish the harvest of liberty and protect its fruits and yields shall preserve this country until thaw. Invasion, like the frost, is not easily defended against, and yet the only way to spring is to endure the ice. Now, notice what I did there. These are the times that try men's souls. These are the times and seasons of change. And then he talks about the summer soldier and the sunshine patriot, talking about seasons. Okay, we're going to keep talking about seasons again. But in this case, we're at the end of an empire, the global American empire. This is late stage, folks. Their empire had not yet even begun, more than 2 centuries ago. So the season is different. We're in a season of change. The global American empire is not sustainable in its current form, and it's going to be rough. There will be a thaw. There will be ice. Before that is the harvest. And we want the people who worked for that harvest to be able to consume it and also protect it for their children, their children's children, and their children's children's children. But we have a problem. We have a big problem. There are people who are coming into our world and taking the first fruits of our labor. Springfield Migrant Crisis. One among many. Now notice I said, tyranny like hell is not easily conquered. My equivalent was, invasion like the frost is not easily defended against. And I did this same approach. I took the same approach to everything in this material. Back and forth and back and forth. I went and looked at a sentence or a couple sentences or a paragraph of Thomas Paine's American Crisis. And I thought, okay, how can I use almost all of those words, have it be about the modern day migrant crisis in America where there's 20 million illegal aliens in the country? How do I make it about that? And so I did. I changed words only where it made sense, but I kept the sentence structure. So going back to Thomas Paine's The American Crisis. It is dearness only that gives everything its value, said Thomas Paine. Says Joshua Lisec. It is sovereignty only over the fertile fields and valleys of a civilization that ensures its safety and satiety. So I keep with the metaphor I've got, the fact that the global American empire is in a season of change, and that season is about to be winter. Winter is coming for this empire, as winter comes upon all empires. And we want to be here afterwards. We want to be here through the ice and into the thaw and into springtime again, when whatever replaces the global American empire, that we are here for that. I don't foresee there being a civil war. I don't see that. I don't really see there being a traditional World War III type of hot war. I instead imagine something that is going to be a little bit more dramatic than anything we've ever seen or could imagine in the world. And what I foresee coming depends on what happens. It depends on what happens to the harvest. Do we, the people who worked for it, who expected it, do we get it? Or do we give it to 20,000 Haitians? I suggest that you read both side by side. First, read The American Crisis by Thomas Paine to get a sense of how I did this. And then go and read by Joshua Lisec, The American Migrant Crisis. I'm linking it below. It's on Human Events. Human Events Daily. Great stuff. And you'll notice how I did a little bit of both. let's bring up another example here. One more example. This is how I ghostwrite. I'm interviewing someone. I use as much of their original material as possible. Where I have transcript, or let's say I have a speech that they gave, but the speech is kind of related to what they sang in the book, kind of not, and it's spoken word versus written word. I look for little things like that, or like, oh, I came up with that. I said that. That's me again. And then grip it and rip it. So coming back to Thomas Paine, he says, this is in the beginning of the second paragraph of the American Crisis. Whether the independence of the continent was declared too soon or delayed too long, I will not now enter into as an argument. My own simple opinion is that had it been 8 months earlier, it would have been much better. Okay. Now, so remember it began, whether the independence of the continent was declared too soon, or that's his thing, right? Whether this happened too soon, or should it have been done later or earlier, I did this. It is fruitless to ask whether immigration reform ought to have been completed during the prior administration. We did not make proper use of the power we possessed until it was lost to those who would deplete our stores and consume our goods and services before harvest in the name of charity. Now, I don't always go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. You'll see that there's plenty of literary license I take with the ghostwriting Thomas Paine 2.0. I'm going with that, and then I think, oh, I'm going to run with it. You have to, as a ghostwriter, know when to run with it and when to go back and use the verbatim. So after I said the bit about depleting our stores on the name of charity, I say, much has been lost. We are ravaged in quiet conquest. Now, that might have been something that Thomas Paine said. He didn't. I said that. But it sounds Painesian. It sounds Painish, dare I say. You get the idea. Our young are taken by the reckless, their virtue stolen, and for some also their lives. Those who have died should have lived. Those who live in their stead should live someplace else. The branches of Liberty Tree hang low and bare. Scavengers pick over her fallen carcassed fruit. Nightfall comes early. That is dramatic. It is dark. And of course, it speaks to the season, harvest, and the fact that there is these fruits that are not being harvested properly, just being forgotten, tossed aside. And I'm also talking about, yes, we're talking about violence of a certain type towards women, but I'm doing it in a way that is 18th century almost. Is classical and is not graphic. I say their virtue stolen, and for some also their lives. We think of all the women who have been taken by predators from foreign lands. It's not good. And then I say also, my opinion has been and still is that and then I use that phrase, that phraseology. I believe he uses, let's give one more example. One more. As I was with the troops at Fort Lee and marched with them to the edge of Pennsylvania, I am well acquainted with many circumstances, Thomas Paine says. What makes sense for me to say there? As I was with the troops at Fort Lee. Obviously, it makes sense for me to say, as I was with the citizens of Springfield on September 19th, 2024, overhearing murmurs and complaint, I had become well acquainted with the lot of the city. That's at a Ghostwrite Like Joshua Lisec. Now, in this, throughout this, he makes it clear that the bad guys are the king of England, obviously, and also the Tories locally, those loyalists who are supporting him in every way that they can, and the efforts to oppose General Washington, the Continental Congress, and the Continental Army. In my piece, the equivalent is going to be the federal government and corporations who benefit from private industry, enterprise that benefits from low wages, and benefits from imported labor. It's not good. It's not good. If you want to ghostwrite like me, this is what you do. You get nerdy and you get autistic about the verbatim, and you use it as much as you can, but you stick your own stuff in there, or rather what needs to be said by the client and the new context, and then you just freaking run with it. And then, where appropriate, new paragraph, circle back to the existing material. So when they read through it, they're skimming and scanning. Oh, wow, this is me. This is totally me. But it's inspired by versus copy and pasted by. That's how to write like the ghostwriter.